In the slides on your USB, I think there's an image that comes apparently out of the US military, the Air Force, where it's their blog response matrix, right? Something was said. Was it good? Fantastic, thank them. Was it bad? Okay, well, how bad was it? Are they just a troll? And by a troll, they're just going out there and basically making comments for the sake of being a pain? You can ignore them. Are they misinformed? Well, let's educate them. Or is there a fundamental argument that we need to get into that's on an analytical level? Well, let's figure that out. And then here are our outcomes, basically. So they've created this sense of immediately seeing something and finding it, here's how we respond, right? And you can do some of that in your policies and things like that. So there's at the bottom of this slide, there's the address for this. This is organizational, so this is less about you as individuals. But if at the end of the day you're going back to your organization saying, I've learned so much about social media, there's all these great tools out there, we got to start using this more, the first thing back is going to be, well, Facebook is a horrible place. Haven't you heard about all of the bullying? And blogs are ridiculous. Look at what people are writing about their cats and pictures of this. And we shouldn't be on social media. It doesn't make any sense. So you may need to make the pitch to your organization. And there's some really great sources to do that. This Web 2.0 plan or social media plan was created in 2008 for a particular conference and works you through the steps to figuring out where social engagement fits into your work. It doesn't talk about technology at all. It talks about organizational purpose and mission, who you're trying to reach, what your messages are, what you want to say to them, what do you have to offer now in terms of content, all of those kinds of things. But what's nice is that at the end of the day, you've got something that aligns with the strategic priorities of your organization, which can then be turned into the next steps of figuring out, well, what's the right technology to support this? Because at the bottom line of this, and I've done this with the organization I'm working for now, is it makes you think about who your audience actually is, how you want to engage them, and where they are to be engaged, right? I think someone may have said in the last day or two, go to where your audience is, right? The holy grail for most web kind of stuff is bring them to us. Let's build a website, let's build a community site, let's get everybody coming to us. But the beauty and the challenge of social media is that they're already all out there, so maybe you just need to go and have a presence where they are, right? And that's something that's important. But the strategy, and this is something useful for your organization, can help you actually walk through that. And then, well, what about policies? What about priorities? There's a couple of websites. One is a database of over 70 social media policies by for-profits, non-profits, government organizations, big, small organizations, and you can borrow from that to figure out. But the bottom line with social media is basically this, right? And some of these organizations are like that. If you're putting something out through blog, through Twitter, through Facebook, would you put that on your company letterhead? Right? It's the same test you probably should have for your own emails, because that's the bottom line. Some people say, would you Twitter something that your mother could see on a billboard over the highway? Right? The test is that kind of test. Is this something that you are representing your organization whenever you put something out into the public domain? So the smell test or the policy test is, would we do this? Would we say that as an organization? Would I stand on this stage and say this to you? And it's a pretty simple test. It's common sense test, right? But there are really good policies for learning and grounding your organization. And if you want to create your own, there's a really neat policy tool, that one at the bottom, which has actually been created by a Canadian lawyer, Canadian content, which is like a little wizard that walks you through. It's 12 steps asking you a series of questions that at the end will spit out a little social media policy tool that you might be able to take as the beginnings of something for your organization. But for you, it's important that you also have a strategy as an individual. So what I call the listening strategy. Beth Kanter, if you do any searching on nonprofit social media stuff, she's this guru in the United States. She came up with questions to ask yourself. Again, they're very simple. And I encourage you, if you're starting to look at how I can use social media as a way to learn and gain information about how to do my work better, that you use some of these questions, which is why? What is it that you're doing? How does this align with your day-to-day? The work that you're doing should fit online and offline. There should be a connect. If there's a disconnect, there might be something wrong, right? You shouldn't be doing anything online that doesn't further the goals of either your organization or your project. Then come up with ways you're going to use that information. So I know when I do my media scan, I email it and then I tweet it, because we have an audience there as well. And those are the places where we're sharing that stuff. And then we archive it so that we can go back to it if we want to. So there's quick and dirty ways that I know exactly every morning when I get that information exactly how I'm going to use it, and that becomes your routine. And then how are you going to organize it, right? Are you the only one listening if it's listening for your organization, or are you just listening for yourself, right? So at my organization, I have 4 or 5 other people who send me stuff. I'm the aggregator, but they're still listening. They're hearing things through different means, and they know that the rest of the organization needs to know it. But our strategy is not to just send out a multitude of individual emails all day long, but to pull them all into one daily email so that people get it, it's searchable, they know exactly where to look. And then the tools and how you'll share and stuff like that. Okay? So really quickly, because we've only got about 20 minutes or 25 minutes, I'm going to burn through this stuff. One of the things that's really important is we kind of lose our minds when we go online. We forget that we know stuff. I don't know if you've experienced this. You go online and you forget how to evaluate critical information. Because it's on the internet, it must be true, we get overwhelmed. So the first kinds of things around this is what we're looking for most of the time is trusted resources. So where would you go if the internet didn't exist for this, right? Who would be your resource for this kind of information if the internet crapped out today and you needed to go and get this kind of stuff? So it's your networks. It's the big institutions you deal with who provide information back. But because we have the internet, Google is probably going to be a starting point for most of you, but that gets overwhelming. Social search is the next big thing. You probably heard some of this in the media, right? And that's with Twitter and Facebook, where you create your own kinds of networks, or on LinkedIn, probably more appropriately for the work that we do. And then you figure out ways to get that information quickly and easily. So if someone is providing information online right now, there's going to be a way for you to subscribe to it. And that's either by email or by RSS or following them on Twitter or joining their Facebook group. But all of those things, the reality is someone is sharing information, and especially if you're sharing it in social media tools, you can subscribe to it to get notified when something changes or is updated immediately, and that's kind of useful. So the finding information, I'll give you a simple, quick test that you probably apply in your daily life. It's the CRAP test online. Is this information current? How reliable is the source that this is coming from? So when I'm on that link farm of 400 pages of links, who is putting this out there? Is this reliable? Are they telling me who they are? Do I know anything about them? Currency, when was it updated? And that may or may not matter depending on the validity of the information. Something from 2000 may be the core key thing, right? But if it's new stuff, you need to know when it was updated. And who wrote this? What authority do they write this information on? Again, a little bit more about the author and the purpose and the point of view. Why are they writing this? Are they trying to convince me? Are they trying to inform me? It's important when we look at this kind of stuff to be able to apply a simple, critical test to the evaluation, the information that we find. So, really quickly, we're going to burn through a bunch of tools to help you figure out and share. But before that, of course, I'm going to talk a little bit more about there's time in all of this. Let's not be fooled that by doing this kind of stuff, it's just, magic, that this stuff happens, it doesn't take time. Like I've told you, I have an hour a day that I spend. That's 5 hours a week. It adds up, it adds up, it adds up. The more you want to do around this kind of stuff, around social media engagement, the more time it will take, the bottom line, right? If you want to get all the way up to building a community where you're going to have real-time webinars with people getting together physically over a video feed, or you're creating an online discussion forum, you're talking about potentially up to 20 hours a week of somebody's time, because you can't just build it, set it, and forget it, as they say, right? You have to nurture it. It's facilitation. It's engagement. This is no different than when you do something offline. People tend to make a distinction between online and offline, that I engage with people when I'm offline. I'm face-to-face. We're actually talking to each other. Someone said, when I'm on the phone, I'm really kind of connecting with someone. Well, the reality is you can get that online as well. Some of you probably do in some forums. But the whole point of this is to connect with your people, your clients, or your constituents and that kind of thing. And that does take time. So you have to rejig how we do our work sometimes, because you can't just add an hour or two to your schedule a day. You have to change the way you do your work, and that's something that can evolve over time. The other thing is that the returns on some of this can also take time. Remembering the 90-90-1 rule, if you're trying to build community, it's going to take time for that to sort of take off, and you have to measure your expectations about where that's going to go. But quickly, some of the tools to go through.
25 minutes.
I know, but they want me to finish a little early to give you time for evaluation. All right, cool. So we don't have that much time, but we have some time. So the tools that I'm going to run through fairly quickly are the tools that I use. How many people here are familiar with RSS? Oh, fantastic. And how many of you actually use RSS, like readers and things like that? Okay, good. So RSS stands kind of for really simple syndication. Don't worry about it. It's the technology that's behind most of this social media and most of the tools other than email that we use that allows us to be notified immediately when something happens, right? And don't ask me how it works technically, but basically the bottom line is if I'm subscribed to your RSS feed, say on your blog, the moment you post something on that blog, I'll know about it. And that's fantastic, right? Gone are the days of my list of 150 bookmarks and I go check every one of those sites every day. Think about that. Some of you may still be doing some of that. You go to these sites and you check the core sites every morning. Don't do that if you can avoid it, because that's a time waster. Most of these sites now have some form of a way to notify you, right? So that might be RSS, it might be email, it might be a bunch of different ways. So RSS, this little green, this little orange icon, when you see that on a website, or the words RSS or Syndicate or Atom or XML, these are different variations of what you'll see, but generally you're going to see that. You'll see it in your browser now, like Internet Explorer or Firefox, in the address field. If there's an RSS feed on that page, the nice thing is your browser will tell you, which is kind of helpful. And that means that you can now subscribe to updates from that website or blog or news source or something like that. And the way it works is this. I use a website called Google Reader. How many of you who use RSS use Google Reader? Yeah, a few of you? Okay. So I recommend this, especially if you're using Gmail and other things. It integrates nicely with all of the Google tools, but it's also just a really simple kind of thing. You can't see too clearly, but it kind of looks like your email inbox, right? So what's happening here is on the left are the subscriptions. On the left-hand column are all the things that I'm subscribed to broken into folders. And this is where I talk about the prioritization. Because if you look at the top, I don't know if you can see it, I've got sector, NP Tech, e-services, information. Those are the folders that if I only have 10 minutes today, I check those first. The stuff in the middle is the everything. You see it says all items there, right? That's overwhelming because I'm subscribed to probably about 400 resources, which you won't be, and that's crazy. But the software allows you to organize them. So the folders are key if you're starting to feel like you're oversubscribed. Because I know, again, right now, for example, this look has actually changed recently. Let me see the next slide. Yeah, so you see on the left, that was an old screen capture, and you see that the folders are different now. Because now I work at a new organization, and the stuff that I have to check first in the morning is different than it was the last time. So I just moved folders around and reprioritize. So for me, that's not in alphabetical order. That's in a particular order of, if I only have 15 minutes today, I go into alerts, Maitrey alerts, sector, Toronto, voices, bloggers, hire immigrants, and e-government. And the rest of that stuff is less important, and I'll check it later in the day because it's not as much of a priority for my morning. So the software allows you to immediately filter some of this and helps you think through it if you get oversubscribed, and that can be incredibly useful, right? So what happens here is basically the moment I go to this little orange thing, I click on subscribe, it'll ask me, do you want to subscribe with Google Reader or a variety of other tools? And I'll say Google Reader. It'll pull it in here. It'll allow me to immediately categorize it into one of these folders, and it'll add it to this crazy stream in the middle of all items. But once I click on something, this is an example, once I click on alerts, then I get only the specific things that I've subscribed to by keyword alerts. And then what I've shown you in the middle is when you click on one of them, it opens to show you a little bit of the information. Depending on what you subscribe to, you'll get a snippet like this, or you'll get the full article, and that's the best, right? So you don't even have to go to the website. Blogs are really good like that. Some newspapers do that as well, and alternative media sources. So a lot of times during my day, I never actually even have to leave my Google Reader to go onto these websites because I have the material there, which means I don't get distracted by the stuff in all of their sidebars. I don't get distracted by the pop-up advertising if it's a commercial site and things like that. It allows me to stay very focused. And skimming and scanning become very important resources here because I can see immediately, you might even see it, yeah, there's some duplication that happens here because of some of the keywords. So I know that immigrant children in Toronto have more mental health problems than newcomer children or in other cities. There's 2 of those there, so I only really need to click on one of them, right? So I'm skimming, I'm looking. That's another strategy and process that you have to start developing when you're dealing with social media is the scannability of things. Not just titles, but also within the article. Once you click on something because it looks interesting, quickly pick out keywords. This makes sense for me. Is this what I need to look at? But RSS allows you to pull all of this stuff into one place, and you don't have to necessarily leave your reader in order to basically look at that information. So RSS, if you I think it's RSS in plain English. If you do a Google search for RSS in plain English, there's these great videos that someone has created, 4 minutes long, which will give you a quick overview about what it is and how you can use it.